Discussing Dexterity, a PhD by Sangwoon Kim from MIT. I came across this presentation and I paid attention for a couple of reasons. One is, of course, we're focused on robots and particularly hand manipulation of robots, which is important for humanoid robots and their application in factories or home and those types of environments. Sangwoon also happens to be a very eloquent, clear person. We appreciate that. Unfortunately, in the science community, there's a lot of people that like to talk a lot but don't say much. He is the exact opposite. He's very concise, very clear, very transparent. I think a very good person to work with in general. He's able to explain complex situations, in my opinion, in a very, very straightforward way. So he talks about the problem of dexterity, which is, think about it this way, like you take, let's say, an object and then you place that object against some sort of environment and you try to achieve something with it. So what that means is, for example, you have, let's say, a Rubik's Cube and you want to put that Rubik's Cube in a box, but very, very tight environment, right? So you don't have a lot of space. And what you do is imagine as a human, a blind human, what would a blind human do? It would take, he or she would take that, that block and kind of move it towards the confinement and then, sort of tactilely test, hold the object, but then test the contours of, let's say, the particular place where the cube has to be put in, and kind of sense their way through, and that's what Kim is doing. And I think it's really an interesting problem. It might not be, of course, his work is kind of specifically created to solve the problem. For example, he's trying to place an object on stiff poles. So think of it like, imagine you have like pencil-like poles that are standing up, and now you want to put a Rubik's Cube on top of them without collapsing the system. So you kind of gotta feel your way through it. That's really the way I see what dexterity means. It's feel your way through an object and the environment. And he calls the two environments intrinsic and extrinsic. The intrinsic environment is when you grasp the object, so your relationship, let's say, between your hand and the object, and the extrinsic is the object with the environment. And he solves that problem with what he calls a fully integrated simultaneous pose and proprioceptive estimation of where the object is, where your grasp is relative to the object, and where the object is relative to the environment. Why are we doing all this? Just for new listeners, we're always interested in scientific knowledge. We spend a lot of time thinking about what the latest research is. We attend about 3 to 4 conferences per year, but we continuously spend time here at Stanford and Berkeley, locally, in person. We go to seminars, particularly robotics. And we also, like this one, we just watch them on YouTube. Just to be clear, we are focused on robotics because that's our main positioning, whether it's through Tesla or to NVIDIA. And we're really very happy to explore all kinds of solutions, whether it's pure simulation, whether it's sim to real, whether it's real stuff, like this one is sort of a hybrid sim to real. I think all the bets are off here. We can succeed on very different avenues and also combine ideas. So this is a very fruitful new field, and it's just very exciting. And hopefully this podcast series can give people a bit of a sense for how we approach this. It might not be the right way, but it's one way, and the purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense for what it feels like to run a hedge fund, and hopefully we can help you. This is Not Even Wrong podcast. It's October 1st, 2024. This is Krim Delco. For the day, the fund is down 2.7%. The market is down 90 basis points. For the year, we are up 23.2%. The market's up 19.7%. We're outperforming by 2.5%. So this is the thesis that we're discussing today by Sangwoon Kim from MIT. He's a mechanical engineer there, and he solves the TEXterity problem. So this is, you hold an object and you're placing that object in a confined space, for example. So you need to take the object and feel your way through, let's say, a very tight space and put it there. Or you take a sharp object and you hand it to a person. Again, you want to feel your way through, make sure you don't hurt anybody. The problem here is that you have an object that you're interacting with, and that object interacts with the environment, and both are relevant. And the way someone solves this from a technical perspective, he has sort of a simultaneous pose estimation and proprioceptory input to understand where the forces are of his robot, the actuators, the pose of the object, and the interaction of the object with the environment. I'm not going to go into the technical details of how he did it, but the idea is really to combine as many parameters as possible and then keep some of them learnable. Some of them are fixed, like physics parameter, for example, how the object slides on the surface, which is already a sort of a further research idea that he comes up with at the end of the presentation, which is, of course, you can relax that and say, okay, what about different physics environments? Cluttered space, icy stuff, harsh environments, earth type environments. So you have different environments. He's only using one environment here. But of course, this is a research project, a PhD, so there's constraints. We can't expect someone to solve for all kinds of different environments. This is something that we expect the companies like Tesla or Figure AI to do. But this is, again, an interesting start for a more comprehensive manipulation of robot limbs in real environment. Someone uses simulation. He uses reinforcement learning. He also uses auto-regressive learning. He uses unsupervised learning. So there's a lot of techniques that he's using, which is interesting, and actually it shows how open the field is, because he is using a lot of different machine learning techniques, and I think that's a good testament for the excitement of this. So maybe let me just give briefly, again, the statement of the problem is, we study the problem of precisely controlling in-hand sliding regrasp by pushing against an external surface, i.e. extrinsic dexterity, supervised only by robot proprioception and tactile sensing. This is the key. So we only have proprioception, which is we have forces and directions of the robot arm, and we have tactile sensing. The tactile sensing itself, I believe, is an optical tactile sensing. You have optical tactile sensing, you have resistive tactile sensing, you have electronic tactile sensing. So there's all kinds of different tactile sensing technologies, and that's another whole rabbit hole you can go down and test different tactile sensors. The idea of a tactile sensor is simply that you interact with an object, you create certain forces, and those forces give you information about your relationship with the object. That's what tactile sensing actually means. And then you have the object interacting with the environment, which is another type of tactile sensing, if you will. And those two combined, you simultaneously estimate pose estimation based on your proprioception and your tactile sensing. And while doing that, creating certain loss functions using, again, autoregressive modeling or reinforcement learning to eventually get to the goal of placing an object somewhere without too much damage. So this is really what it's all about. I think we are very often in this podcast series, we come up with these types of presentations and maybe isolate that they might look like just research projects, and why do we care as a hedge fund? We do care because these types of stats, this is exactly when we say that we are interested in the sort of tangential line between science, technology, and entrepreneurship. And we believe that this is exactly along those lines. Maybe tactile sensing and TEXterity are a little bit more still in the scientific realm, but the idea is, of course, phenomenal, because you could have, let's say, of course, okay, let me retrace that. Computer vision is sort of the holy grail of robotics right now, of AI in general. Real world AI is driven by computer vision, particularly self-driving cars. And in the case of self-driving cars, which is mainly a navigation problem, vision is probably the best way to go. But there's a lot of problems where vision is not enough. For example, very confined spaces, or spaces where you have the problem of damage. So you want to put a porcelain vase in a very confined space consisting of glass. That's something where vision might not be the best way to go. You might want to use tactile sensing. You might want to use something that can understand the environment and the forces that are exhibited on the object and between the object and the environment. And this is the problem that Sangwoon Kim is solving in this particular work. Just as a side note here, I really enjoyed his presentation. It's very clear. It's one of those where you really understand what's going on. You might not understand all the technical intricacies of the problem, but you understand the big picture problem, which very often, even that is very convoluted in many presentations. So I really appreciate that. And I wish Sangwoon Kim best of luck and a lot of success in his future. And yeah, hopefully he can use this knowledge for real world applications and you know, help move forward the humanoid robotics industry. Thank you.